Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Stepmom Coach radio program, where our focus is to provide you with great information, support, and inspiration into becoming the best stepfamily you can. And my mission is to help stepfamilies heal, build, and strengthen their families one step at a time. Today we're going to be talking about the power of forgiveness and peace. I think this is such an important topic because at any point in our lives, whether we're young, old, or in between, we will have areas where we feel someone has done us wrong. And it's hard sometimes to forgive, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to forget. And so we're going to be talking with my guest expert, Tagg, and I'll be introducing to you in a few minutes here. But before we go on, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. My name is Claudette Chenevert, and I'm known as the Stepmom Coach. And I know what it's like to build a strong family for the 21st century. After being a single parent for close to 4 years, I met the man of my dreams, who also came with 2 daughters. Through our roller coaster relationship, my husband and I both gained deep insight into the special needs of stepmoms, stepdads, and their families. And this experience has allowed me to develop and refine some powerful tools that we've used in our own family to help women and their families shorten their learning curve and to build a harmonious family. I'm dedicated to making life for stepfamilies more fulfilling and enriching by providing education and inspiration one step at a time. So I invite you to visit my website and check out my events, products, and services that I offer. And the website is www.stepmomcoach.com. So today's guest, his name is Tagg, and he is a published author, professional speaker, and radio show host. He's written 2 personal growth books, Enrich Your Sunrise and The Path to a Peaceful Heart. Taylor's blog talk radio show, Journey to Success, showcases people who are passionate about making a difference in the world with transformational business and ideas. Taylor's talent lies in advising people in how to fulfill their emotional and spiritual potential. Taylor empowers those dealing with significant adversity to aspire to peace using his easy-to-use peace process. Taylor joins us today to discuss the peace process and the power of forgiveness. Welcome to our show, Taylor.
Well, thank you, Claudette, for having me. It's an honor to be on your program. Thanks so much for asking me to be here today.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I mean, we've talked a bit in the past. I've even been on your radio show, and, this is such a big topic, forgiveness and peace. And it's really challenging, I think, for a lot of people to be able to understand what it all means. So I'd like to ask you, how did you get into the work of emotional intelligence and forgiveness?
Well, you're right, Claudette. Forgiveness is a tough subject for a lot of people, and I'll share with your listening audience how I got involved in forgiveness, and it really started for me as a small child. I had an uncle who was a Catholic priest, and I listened to him every Sunday in church, and he talked about forgiveness quite often. And as a child, I said, well, that sounds good, and it sounds good, but I don't need to forgive anybody. I have nothing to forgive in my life, which I didn't realize simultaneously I was living a situation in my home that turned out to be an abusive situation, a pretty tough topic for a lot of people. And it wasn't until years later in my life that I realized the power of my uncle's talks on forgiveness really changed and helped me shape the power of my own life going forward, and helping people let go of resentments and learning how to forgive or how to re-forgive in their life is a big part of how I got involved in this type of work. And for me, the peace process, which we'll talk about later, is just the unfolding of many things that happened in my life over a 30-year period. which we'll get into and talk a little bit more about. But forgiveness is a hard subject, and my job in the world is to try to make it easier for a lot of people who suffer and are in pain in their life. And this is one of the great ways to experience joy and peace and freedom in your life is to forgive.
Yeah. I so agree. I mean, I work with stepmoms, and a lot of them have a lot of resentment and anger, either towards their spouses, the exes, or their spouses' exes, or even the kids. And you can hear it in their voice how much they're really suffering, and yet they have no a way or understanding of what they need to do in order to get past it. And I don't suggest that, and maybe I'm wrong here, I don't suggest that we necessarily forget about what happened, but I think to learn how to deal with it in effective and constructive ways is really what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and I think that at least from my perspective, forgiveness is not necessarily forgive and forget. It's forgive and remember, because it's easy to forgive in one way and let go of the pain and the suffering that you're experiencing, but you want to remember, what happened. And many times when we forgive an ex-spouse or forgive a child, that doesn't mean we lay down and let them run over us. It doesn't mean that we give up what we think is right. Forgiveness is really just letting go of the pain and the sting that a person's actions have against you. And I'll give you a good example of how I wrote about forgiveness in my book, The Path to a Peaceful Heart. And I say this about forgiveness. It's really the true essence of forgiveness is letting yourself off the hook. It's the hook of toxic shame and fear that's eating your present self alive. And forgiveness is really not about giving the other person freedom from the consequences of his or her actions. It's about giving yourself the freedom from the consequences of his or her actions. And that's really what it's about. It's not letting someone else off the hook or excusing them for anything that they've done, but it's excusing yourself. And what I've found as I work with people, I really find that forgiveness is an act of self-love. When you forgive someone else, it's really letting yourself go and letting yourself experience the love that you have inside yourself, because forgiveness comes from the inside out. It's not an outside-in type of proposition. And that's the beauty of forgiveness, when you're able to understand that it comes from the inside out, and it's really, you're giving yourself that love that you deserve.
And that is so profound. I mean, I'm feeling goosebumps as you're sharing this, because, I don't think there's one person that can say they've never felt anger or frustration or resentment towards someone at some point in their life. And some people are able to forgive, and others just won't. I mean, in my own family, with my parents and their brothers and sisters, and even their own parents, that resentment trickled down to us grandchildren, that are the kids, and to not liking someone because our parents didn't agree with them. And it's today as an adult, I'm thinking, wow, how do you rebuild those bridges that were created by another generation because they couldn't forgive what happened. And there were things that, you could go and say, listen, I know you're not perfect, but, why stop communication, and why stop, talking with one another? And it's a challenge. And I know for myself it's a personal challenge in other areas of my life. And so what are some of the things that a step-parent or a stepmom can do to help get to forgiveness?
Well, that's a great question, and I love what you said about having difficulty with family members talking about forgiveness. And what usually happens is when we get our feelings hurt when something happens, we take a position. We say, that's not acceptable, that's not right, and I'm not going to have anything to do with you until you change yourself. You come to my way of thinking. And really, as you get to the power of forgiveness, you realize that the change comes within you. It comes within you towards that other person. And as I forgave myself and got through this peace process that I'm talking about, I realized something really important, that people do the best that they can with what they have at the time. And so they might not have or make all the correct actions or say all the right things, or they may say something that hurts you, but they're really just doing the best they can with what they have at the time. And in understanding that, forgiveness becomes a little bit easier. It becomes a little bit more acceptable when you realize that we're not all perfect and we don't have it all figured out. And some of us wish that we did, but we don't. And that so giving that person some leeway in understanding that, you know, they're just doing the best what they have at the time, it helps a person. Now, in my own life, as I started out in talking about this peace process, one of the ways that I was able to move towards forgiving another person was that I began to look at my life and everything in it as something that I needed to take an account of. Were the things that I learned from my parents, were those the things that were going to move my life forward, or were they not? And so I began examining everything in my life, all the things that I learned, both good and bad, right or wrong. Was that helping me? And I found that there were a couple of things in my life that I had learned growing up that were holding me back from being the person that I wanted to be. And so really that the first part of the peace process is to practice becoming an observer witness to your life. What is going on in your life that is holding you back? And if you go to any type of group, if you go to any type of organization, the first thing they're going to ask you to do is to identify what the problem is, identify what is holding you back. Until you identify that, you're not going to be able to make any ground up. And you're not going to get to a level of forgiveness until you first identify what is going on in your life, what is holding you back. For me, in my life, what was holding me back was the fact that I was not present in my relationships. I was not present. And as a child, this goes back to my childhood ordeal, I had cut myself off from really my feelings towards anything, not as a means to do anything other than protect myself, because I was in a terrible situation and I didn't know anything different than just to cut off my emotions. And that helped me for a long time. But as I became an adult and got into adult relationships, I was still practicing that same thing, cutting myself off from everyone else. And it was until I realized and identified that as a child I had cut my emotions off, and that would be similar to not talking to family members like we described a few minutes ago. Until I realized that was holding me back, was I able to really do anything about it and to make an adjustment. So the first part was to identify what is my problem.
I think a lot of times we are quick to look at what others are doing to us, but forget to look inside. How are we contributing to this problem or to this relationship? And until we are willing and able to look within ourselves, because, you know, it's a two-way street, right? I mean, if things aren't going well, you need to also look, how are you dealing with it? How are you contributing to it? And it may be by thought more than with your actions or words, but you know your thought process.
Well, I was just saying that's exactly right, and that's the core of what we're talking about here, the work that we're doing, especially with forgiveness. It comes from the inside out. Normally we're looking at everyone else and saying, all right, what do they need to do to change themselves to make me feel better about mine? And so The forgiveness work that we're talking about is, all right, let's look at what's going on inside me to be able to change myself to the rest of my family or the rest of my stepchildren. Because when you make that change within yourself, that tends to change everyone else around you. They see it, they feel it. You might not speak a word about that change, that positive change that happens, but they will gravitate to it.
What if you're thinking, okay, I want to forgive, but the other person is not willing for you to forgive them? Sometimes it's okay. I'm going to forgive you for what you did or you said. Like if I'm talking about ex-spouses, I'm forgiving you for the kind of relationship we had and for the way you treated me. But this other person keeps telling you, I don't want anything to do with you. No, you're crazy. Don't talk this nonsense to me. So what happens? What can a person do in that situation?
Well, that's a great question. And many times people think that forgiveness is a two-way street. And if you're trying to reconcile with someone and make a tough situation better, and it's possible for two people to come together and talk about it and work it out, that's great. But many times one person is not willing to make it happen. And so forgiveness is exactly that. It is the ability to change yourself towards another person, whether they accept that or not. And we see that with many people who have lost family members. Say, for example, a child who has lost a parent or a parent who has lost a child. They don't have that ability to reconcile with them if they're gone. And so forgiveness does not require you to reconcile, although it's great if it happens. Forgiveness only requires you to forgive either another person from within yourself or forgive yourself for your part in the situation. And that's the beauty of forgiveness. You're releasing yourself from the situation and the sting and the hurt that comes with it, not the other person. And so that's the wonder of forgiveness, is it does not require the other person to accept you and your forgiveness. You accept it within yourself, and that makes it all better from within.
And so what are some of the things that a person can expect when they start forgiving another? What are some of the emotions or the feelings a person can expect from forgiving someone else, even if that person isn't willing to be forgiven? Or like you said, it doesn't have to be, the other person doesn't have to accept it. So, but the person who does the forgiving, what is it that they get out of this?
Well, that's a great question, too. The people that I work with, they're usually in a very painful state. Many people look at forgiveness and say, yeah, that's maybe something that I'll do one day. But the people that I work with, they're ready. They're ready to forgive. The pain of not changing has become greater than changing, the pain of changing. And so they're so ready for something to happen. They're saying, I'm tired of this situation. I'm tired of feeling sad and lonely. I'm tired of feeling like I'm not worthy. I don't need that. I'm not worthy of anything. So I'm ready to make a change in my life. And when that happens, Claudette, I will tell you, I see miracles happen. The people that we work with in our workshops, yes, it is painful up front. They might have to express a truth within themselves that they haven't expressed in a long time. They might be mad. They might be angry. They might be upset. They might be fearful. They might be scared to death to go through something like this. But once it's out there, and it's out there in a very short period of time, there's some steps that I take a person through, and what they experience on the other side is nothing short of miraculous. We see people who have let go of a resentment that they've held for 50 or 60 years against a parent or a child, and they're joyous, they're exuberant. Their cheeks are red and flushed with joy and happiness. They can't believe that they didn't do this 50 years ago. So there's just joy and exuberance and gratitude for the process after the fact. And the great thing about forgiveness is you only have to do it once. Once you forgive someone, it's permanent. You don't go back to those feelings of anger or sadness or not feeling worthy enough. They're over with forever. And so that's the joy. If you can go through a few minutes of getting that emotional truth out of you and release it, the joy just keeps on pouring in to you long after the process of forgiveness is over. And that's what I describe in my book, is that peace comes to you. And it's not a peace that lasts for a fleeting moment and disappears. It's a peace that lasts for the rest of your life. And if you can spend a few minutes on the front end to get over the anger and the disappointment and the hurt that you have, and spend the rest of your life thinking about that in a very peaceful way, when you want to sign up for that?
Oh, yeah, I'm signing up right now. Yeah, oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine someone not wanting to live that kind of life, to really feel what joy and happiness and fulfillment and gratitude, what it actually feels inside of yourself. Because if you don't, then you feel like an empty shell. You're feeling like a zombie almost walking around, right?
Yes, and that's true, and that's why we don't see more people signing up for forgiveness. If it's that great on the back end, then why isn't everybody signing up like hotcakes on this?
Yeah.
Well, because there's a lot of fear on the front end. There's a lot of fear that if I forgive a person, that means they have the upper hand on me. If I forgive a person, that means I'm allowing them to walk all over me. If I forgive a person, that means I have to give up my feelings of being right on this subject, and I don't want to do that. And so there's a lot of resistance up front that you're gonna take a position of weakness if you forgive, and that's really totally the opposite. When you forgive, you get into a very much powerful situation. You begin to take your power back, and you use that power to improve your relationships, whether the other person decides to get on board or not. You become a stronger person because you forgive, and that's the beauty of it. But we see so much resistance up front that just it's one of the hardest things to do on the planet for people is to forgive. And I guess that's why, Jesus was the master example of forgiveness, and he said, forgive others because you have been forgiven, and that's one of the hardest things to do. It's so difficult on the front end, but the benefits just keep pouring in long after you've gone through the process.
I can imagine. So tell me, Taylor, what are some of the steps to forgiving others? I know that you talk about this on your website and in other places. So what are some of the steps to forgiving others? And I know you also have forgiveness of self. And so maybe if you could share what's the difference between forgiving others and forgiving self, and just share what some of those steps are.
I'd be happy to, Claudette, and I appreciate you asking me this. I have a system, an 8-step system for forgiving another person and a 5-step system for forgiving the self. And it's a beautiful system. I've worked with several people who've gone through this process. It's been out there in the world for about 50 years. It was originally created by a man named Roberto Assagioli, who created the idea of psychosynthesis, and it was perfected by other people. And my spiritual teacher lives in Minnesota named Mary Hayes Greco, taught it to me. But it's a beautiful way to forgive another person. And there are 8 steps to forgiving another person. And this process is a full person process. It encompasses the mental, it encompasses the physical, it encompasses the emotional, and it encompasses the spiritual. And that's why it's permanent. Once you move through these 8 steps, you're covering the entire being, the entire person that you are, so it never comes back. It never comes back to haunt you again or anything, because you're covering it from all of these different perspectives. And step number one is really to state your will to make a change. And we use the power of the will to make sure that what we do is definitive. If you say, for example, yeah, I might try that one day, does that really indicate that you're really going to do something about it? Probably not. But we use the power of the will, and the will is a very, very strong part of your internal being to make a change. You use the will. It's state your will. Today I will forgive so-and-so. Today I'm going to forgive my ex-husband. Today I'm going to forgive my stepchild for being such a brat. And that's what you do. You make a case for stating your will. Now, step two is probably the most important part of the process. It is to state your feelings exactly as they are inside of you. What we find as we work with forgiveness clients and forgiveness people in our workshops is that there is something stuck inside of them. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that they got their feelings hurt or they're wounded or something, and it has not been expressed. And many times we grew up with our parents very disciplined, very strict, saying, don't do that in public. You keep your cool, you keep it together. So we've been brought up with the feelings of not being able to express ourselves, and there's usually a feeling inside that has not been expressed that needs to come out. It's usually a feeling of anger. It's a feeling of hurt. And as we take you through this forgiveness process, we are giving you permission, basically, to get that feeling out. And it's usually very raw, it's very emotional, and it's very strong. And that's one of the key tenets of forgiveness, is to get that out of you. Because we know, as we've seen, many people in our workshops, they've held on to a feeling, a negative feeling, for many years, and it's caused physical disease, it's caused illness, it causes mental problems. And so getting that out is such an important part of the process, because when you do, you're setting yourself up for healing. And that's really where the healing begins, is as you, what we call your emotional truth. You get that out and onto the table and out in the open, and then you're setting yourself up to really begin to heal yourself. And so as we continue, and I'll give you one more step, because this is probably really important. After you get that emotional truth out on the table, you're able to release your expectations of that person. And that's really the mental side of it. I've got a position, and I expected something of that person, and they didn't do it, and I'm having a hard time letting go, because that's my belief and that's my expectation, and you got to do it, but you didn't. And so I'm going to let you go and release you because you did it. And as I do that, I really release myself from the sting that you didn't honor my expectation. And so that's step number 3, and that's a really important part of this process too. So what we do in the first 3 steps is state your true intention to forgive someone. We get your emotional truth out, which is the emotional side of you, and then we go to the mental side and we release the expectations that you have of that person or that thing that you're forgiving.
And before you continue with the other steps, I really want you to share, where can people go to find out more about what you do, your books, your process? Because I think, this is such an amazing process that, I want people to be able to reach out to you and, at least read your books or go to your website so that people can know where to go and how to get in contact with you. So if you want to share that before we continue, that would be great.
Absolutely. I would love to. The thing to do would be to go to my website, which is theevolvingheart.com, theevolvingheart.com. And I've just finished writing a series of blog posts called 40 Days of Forgiveness. If you decide to read through any of those blog posts, you'll begin to see what I talk about in the process of forgiveness. I've got a forgiveness page. You can go and you can see the 8 steps to freedom. on that webpage and see the 5 steps to self-forgiveness. I've signed up several one-on-one clients who want to begin to work through the peace process and forgiveness process with me as a result of looking at that page. You can click on my book, which is on the front cover, The Path to a Peaceful Heart, and it'll take you to an Amazon page, and you can purchase either the printed book or the ebook. I would say that would be the first place to start, is to read The Path to a Peaceful Heart, because it talks about my story of overcoming significant childhood adversity and the steps that I took to be able to forgive my abuser and move on into my life. It also has the 8 steps to freedom and the 5 steps to self-forgiveness in the book, and it gives you the process of how to take yourself through that circumstance if you want to. I always recommend to people, if they're working through a significant issue, in other words, if it's just more than what somebody said to hurt my feelings, if it's really a serious issue with a parent or a child or ex-husband or a stepchild, then you need someone to go through that process with you. And so I encourage people and listeners out there to find someone to help you take you through that process. And I'll be happy to do that myself. But if it's not me, find someone else to be able to talk this through with. It's very important.
And I just posted your page, the link to your page, your website on my fan page. So anybody who's interested and wants to find out more, you can go to my Facebook page or go to Taylor's page, which is www.theevolvingheart.com. And I think I visited it and I perused it, and it's a wonderful place to be in and to learn so much.
Well, I was going to say, I would encourage people also, if they're just interested in learning about what forgiveness is and they have a question, just feel free to send me an email. I'll respond to everybody who sends me an email. And my email is Tagg, which is TTAGG, @theevolvingheart.com, and will answer you within 24 hours.
Excellent, great. And so let's continue with the steps to forgiving others, because I think this is great things for people at least to listen and to get a flavor of what it's like and get some of the benefits. I know I'm getting a lot out of just listening to you at this moment, and so it's amazing. So if it's okay, if you can share a little bit more, I think that would be good.
Well, I'll be happy to. And once you have, stated your will to make a change and you're ready to do it, and you're able to release that hurt feeling inside of you and get your emotional truth out, and we let go of the expectations that we have of that person or that thing, the step number 4 is to help the person restore their boundaries. And for many of us who have issues around forgiveness and there's a deep hurt, a deep wound there are no boundaries. There are no boundaries there to help us recover once we move forward in life, to be able to deal with people in a very strong and a very decisive and definitive way. And so I help a person restore their boundaries around the issue, and we usually use visual guided imagery to be able to restore the boundary to make sure that we're protected, because we're releasing something that's very important to us, something that we've held on to for probably many, many years. And so there's a sense of wanting to replace that with something else, and we do that by restoring our boundaries. And as we move on, into step number 5 and 6, we help ourselves even further by opening up to healing energy. And that could be in the form of the Holy Spirit or love and light, or whatever your concept is of something higher than yourself, being God, or whatever that is for you. Mm-hmm. We allow healing energy that is higher than ourselves to assist us in this process. And it's very, very powerful. It's very, very important. And we open up to that healing energy. And I guide my clients through this, and it's very, very powerful and very, very important. And as we end the 8 steps to freedom, in step 7 and step 8, we end up, which seems almost impossible at the beginning, we send our own unconditional love to the person that we're forgiving. And until you go through this process, you'll say, man, there's just no way I can send love to the person I'm forgiving. But it happens, and it happens rather easily when you're involving energy and healing energy that is higher than yourself. And the last step to the process is to see the good in that person, even though it might be so small and so infinite. Find there's something good about that person, even though they might have done you wrong and they might have really made you angry and mad and made you sad. There's something good in that person, and we just need to identify one or two things that's good about that person, and when we do, we complete the process. We make it whole, we make it firm, we make it decisive, we tie it up in a nice little bow, and you're ready to go. And that's when we see people that just are really grateful they were going through the process. They're joyous, they feel lighter, they feel like a 300-pound weight's been lifted off their shoulders, and they have a new zest for life that they hadn't had in many years. That's what we find.
It's so, it looks so amazing, all of this. It's hard to put words to this because it's like, wow, to get to that process and to be able to fully experience a new you because of this process. I think it's true, fear holds us back a lot, but if we don't learn to live fully, then it's really, we're cheating ourselves out of what we can enjoy in life. We're actually missing out in some of the most important parts of our lives. And you're offering a great 8-step system for people to, at least get through some of their issues. So thank you for sharing this. This is so powerful.
Well, it is very powerful, and this system has been around for the better part of 50 years. This is not my creation, although I backed in to virtually all these steps in my own situation. I was able to really study and refine this process through people who have worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of people before me to make it real. It works. If you follow the 8 steps, it works every time. It never fails. And it's so powerful for the people who can somehow gather the courage on the front end to step through their fear. And all fear is an illusion, false expectations appearing real. If we could just step through that fear and just find just the slightest bit of opening to joy and peace and living our lives on a higher scale that is for us rather than against us, this process will change. It changes people's lives. I've seen it over and over and over again.
Wow. And I know you've talked a lot about the peace process, and I'm sure that peace and forgiveness go together. That means they coexist. They're a part of one another, right?
Oh, absolutely. They go hand in hand. And usually when you forgive another person, right on the backside is forgiveness of yourself. You can't really, it's almost a two-sided coin. If you're going to look at the first side, you got to look at the second side because they're both connected and they go both hand in hand. And that's part of the peace process is that the last 2 parts is to claim your forgiveness through freedom and forgiveness of another, which is exactly the 8 steps that we talked about. The final E in the peace process is to elevate your heart and soul through forgiveness of self. And that's the 5-step system that I guide my clients through, and it's very, very powerful. And we talked about the first part of the peace process, which is to practice becoming an observer witness, to go inside and look at your life and see what is happening. What is holding me back? What is it about this other person that I can't let go of? And identify it. Once we've identified it, we can move on to the second part of the peace process, which is the E, and that is examine your repeating pattern. And as you see what's holding you back, you begin to look at your life and see, all right, this is something that's happened over and over and over again in my life. As you step back and take a big picture look at all of life in general, you see everything has a pattern. The stars, the planets are all in a pattern. They're following a pattern. Our life is following a pattern. Our joy usually follows a pattern. And the things that hold us back usually follow a pattern. And as I explained to you earlier in the interview, my detrimental pattern, so to speak, was that I wasn't present for my relationships. I wasn't present mentally. I wasn't present emotionally. And as I became an adult, I realized that, okay, if I don't change this, if I don't do something about it, then I'm not going to have the relationships that I want in life. And this could be, easily connected to relationships that a stepmother has with a stepchild or a husband. The stepmother is the anchor of the family. All women are the anchor of the family because they have that creative force within them, and they really hold responsibility for the rest of the family. It's on their shoulders, and they feel that, they identify with that, and they need peace from that. And so examining your repeating pattern becomes important, and it's all different for every one of us. But as I got to the point where I said, okay, I'm not present for my relationships, that gave me the ability to go to step number 3 of the peace process, which is the A in peace, and that is to apply choice. As I realized that I was being held back by not being present for my relationships, which was a direct result from that situation in my childhood of separating myself and not feeling emotionally because the pain was too great, and I realized as an adult, this is what's holding me back. It wasn't my fault that happened to me in my childhood, but it's only my responsibility to change it as an adult. No one else can do it for me. And so I realized at that point that I had choice. I had choice to change my life if I wanted to. And that's a huge moment for a lot of people when they realize that they truly have the power to choose. They understand that the things they learned from their parents, the things that they learned growing up, good or bad, right or wrong, weren't their fault. But now they have the power to take the initiative and change it for themselves, because that's the only person, you are the only person that has that ability to change your life within you. Then you begin to take your power back. You take your power back by taking responsibility for your own life. And up to that point as a child, I had done my best to blame everybody else for the things that went wrong in my life. I blamed my mom, my dad, my parents, my grandparents, everyone you could possibly think. I blamed them for what was going on or what was not going on in my life. And that was the direct result of not taking responsibility. And once I realized I had choice in my life, I began to take my power back because I accepted that whatever happened in my life was going to be the result of what I did or did not do under my own power. And that's a big deal for a lot of people. Once you get to that point, you've really set yourself up to leap forward in your life, not to just inch forward or move forward. Once I realized I had a power to choose, then I was able to claim my freedom through forgiveness of another. Those were the 8 steps that we carried the audience through just a few minutes ago, which is the C of the peace process. Now, once you get through those 8 steps on a particular issue, then you set yourself up to follow the final piece of the peace process, which is to elevate your heart and soul through the forgiveness of yourself, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Once I really realized and completed the peace process, that's when the peace came in. Once I forgave myself and let myself go for all responsibility that I had taken from in my childhood, in my circumstance, I had felt that I was responsible for that abusive situation in my childhood. And once I realized that, I was able to forgive it and let it go. And once that happened, the peace flowed in, and it was amazing. It happened on March 11, 2011. I'll never forget the day. I can sit here and tell you the day and the time. It was about 3 p.m. It was one of those moments you never forget. The peace flowed in, and it has never left me since. It's nothing anyone can ever take away from me. It'll be with me the rest of my life. And that's the result and the benefits of going through this peace process. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And again, I think you're right that experiencing this kind of process, it's almost I'm almost tempted to say it's almost like an out of body experience because it's so profound and it's so deep. You know,
it's very deep, but it's life changing. It changes your life if you will allow it to. And I don't know anyone who doesn't want to feel better about their life and to have peace and joy and laughter and freedom and less of the anger and the resentments. I don't know anybody who doesn't want that, but it does take a little effort on the front part to make it happen. But it's not as hard as you think it is.
Yeah. And you're right. What you're saying is it takes effort. Anything in life takes effort. I mean, we can't just sit there and say to ourselves, this is what I want, but not move forward. You know, I've used in the past using the rocking chair analogy. You know, you're sitting in a rocking chair and you're rocking back and forth saying, okay, I'm doing something, but you're not going anywhere. So you really need to get up and take those steps, you know, even if it's one tiny step, you know, do one of those steps and start with one of those processes. And that's why I think that your system and your process is so amazing because they're each on their own, they're doable. I mean, they're all doable steps. And then once you put them together, that's when you get the amazing transformation. I think it's important for people to understand that when you do this kind of work, you're doing it for yourself. You know, you're not doing it to make other people happy or to change other people, but you have to realize that this is for you, and then other people are impacted by your transformation.
Well, I agree, and I've been able to take a lot of deep, thoughtful work and put it into easy digest bits in the book. So you do take a step-by-step system. If you like steps, then this book will be great for you because I like steps, I like systems. I like for people to say, all right, you do step 1, you move to step 2. Do step 2, you move to step 3. That's the beauty of the book. Many people will pick this book up and they will be at different parts of their life. They might have observed their life and witnessed it in some form or fashion, but they're ready to move to the next step in life, whatever it is for them. And so that's what this book is able to do, is to identify the next step for you, whatever it is for you. And so I think that in that regard, it's a great book for people just to pick up and say, all right, I've done step 1 already. Now I'm ready to move to step 2. Or I'm certainly ready to forgive my ex-husband, or I'm ready to forgive my child, and I don't know how to do it. Taylor, show me how. Guide me through it. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it is. And so, again, share with us where people can go to work with you and how they can contact you because, you know, sometimes we do these kinds of processes. We enroll in, or we buy a book and we say to ourselves, yes, I promise I'm going to do this. I'll read the book and I'll go through the process. But in reality, we lose steam, or we say to ourselves, oh, this is too hard. I can't do it. And I think this is one area, and this is my thoughts, and maybe you can share a little bit about this, but I think this is definitely an area where you could benefit by having someone hold your hand through the process, especially if it's something really deep or a deep wound or something that's really painful to revisit. And I think that this is one of the processes or one time where if you invest in yourself, this would be one place to do it in.
Well, I knew that in my own personal journey, I couldn't get there by myself. And I sure tried for a long time, in many years. I tried so hard to get there myself. And it wasn't until I, found the aid of a coach and a therapist who specialize in forgiveness was I able to resolve my own story. So I highly recommend that you have someone to go through this process with you and to talk it out with you, to hold your hand, to be there when it gets tough. And it is part of this process is very tough, but the rewards on the other side are so much greater that it's almost not even fair. You just got to take that step. And so if you're willing to work with me, I'm more than happy to help anyone to go through this forgiveness process. That is my dedication for the rest of my life, is to help people learn how to let go of resentments, to serve people in that way. And that's just what I'm here to do on this planet. And the thing to do would be to go to my website, which is theevolvingheart.com. Again, look at my information. You can feel free to send me an email and say, hey, I want a free forgiveness strategy session. Let's talk about what I've got here and where I might need to go. And I'll be happy to do that free for you. And you can reach me by email at Tagg, which is TTAGG, at theevolvingheart.com. And to be honest with you, I don't mind giving my phone number out. If you just want to talk to me, you can reach me at 901-921-8901. If you just want to call, say, hey, Taylor, I heard you do this forgiveness process, and I want to learn more about it. I'm happy to talk with you and discuss where you might need to go. So I'm available, and I'm open to you if you should need me. And so feel free to contact me any way that you can.
And I really encourage the listeners to go because, I like I said, I work with so many stepmoms and their spouses, and there is so much, and especially coming from the men. I mean, when I work with couples, I've had some men really angry at their ex-wives, and they couldn't let go, and it was affecting the relationship with their new spouse. I think people don't realize that until you can let go of old baggage, you're going to have a hard time moving forward in your relationships. And as you said, Taylor, it was preventing you from, really being present in your relationships with people. And it's true. If you're an empty shell inside, or if there's a lot of anger or resentment, it's really, really difficult to give yourself to another person fully and engage in love and happiness with another person if you're still holding on to past resentments with another person.
Well, I totally agree. It's almost impossible to move forward when you've got that cycle of hurt that's replaying over and over and over again. It just takes a word, it takes a look, it takes a glance just to re-trigger that pain inside of you, and it plays over and over and over again. And we see many divorces that happen because people are not able to get over their resentments and move forward. And they just want something different in life, and they don't know what to do. And so I'm telling you and sharing with your listeners that there is an answer. If you want to remain in your relationship and have a good, solid relationship with your children and your family members, you can. But that change begins with inside you, not another person who's adapting to you. It begins with you. And if you're willing to accept that fact, then you're on the right track to being able to forgive another person and really take a huge leap in your life.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing everything you've shared with us. Is there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off for today?
Well, Claudette, I want to thank you for having me on your show. This has been a true honor, and I'm so happy to be on your show. You're a wonderful host, and this has really been a treat for me. And I just wanted to share with your listeners, if you're even remotely thinking about forgiveness and moving forward in your life, and you know inside that something needs to happen, you know inside that forgiveness might be for you, just feel free to contact me and just talk about it. I'm here to talk and to be open and share with you what I've experienced and what my teachers have experienced as well. And if you think forgiveness is for you, then go ahead and contact me and just begin the process of talking about it, because it's a game changer. It will change your life forever if you are insistent on maintaining your relationships and moving forward. Then forgiveness will help you in so many ways. It's not even funny. It is amazing, and we've seen many, many, many miracles happen as a result of working through this peace process and forgiveness process. So thank you so much, Claudette, for having me on. I've enjoyed this so much.
Thank you so much. I've benefited tremendously myself personally from listening to this, and got some great insights and ahas for myself personally in my own life. I mean, I don't think no one's perfect, and we all learn from others, and so I've learned so much from you today, Taylor, and I appreciate and I'm so grateful for the work you're doing and for being there. I think it's something that we all need in our lives is a way of learning how to forgive. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'll do my best to serve those who are ready for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone, for being on the show today. You've just spent another great hour with Claudette Chenevert, the Stepmom Coach, with my guest, Taylor Tagg, on the topic of forgiveness and peace. So to find out more about myself and what I do, visit my website at www.stepmomcoach. This is Claudette Chenevert, the Stepmom Coach. Wishing you a great and wonderful week.